I think what this week we want to discuss in terms of celebrating festivals, and one we want to encourage is recognition of one of our great ancestors, which is Elliot, the
Ebenezer Elliot.
Ebenezer Elliot, Paniza, that
Papa
everybody may
Niza,
know.
yes. Popularly known as Papa Niza.
Yeah. Right. So also we're looking at recognizing the Obaluaye and Obaluaye festival, especially what we know him as Shapana, who bring disease and pestilence in our community, and connecting it with the ancestors, how the ancestors also allow us to be punished by the disease and infections in our village. So I think the discussion should be very exciting and interesting for us. So we go begin by recognizing, first we like to say, Mojba Olodumare Olarun Olafia Baju Sufashe, Mojba Bogbo Risha Bogbo Gunte Melese Olodumare, Mojba Baba Tomi Iya Tomi Baba Risha Yellow Risha, Mojba Baba Ye, Mojba Ishu Darishu Lalo Girioko. Say Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. All right, Baba. Well, first we should give people a little bit of an introduction to a little bit of the history of who Ebenezer Elliot was. Um, and also we should give them a general idea of what the Obaluaye festival is, and also we could also elaborate a little bit about the ancestors and their displeasure with us, because as we know today, we living in our times now where we have a great amount of crime in our community. It is mostly our children who gunning down each other. It is our children who committing a large percentage of the crimes, and a lot of the troubles we have is in our communities. So we do know as a fact that we're facing a lot of punishment. That is the way I put it, as punishment, because I don't consider none of the things I just mentioned as something pleasant and as a reward for goodness. Um, what I think has to be examined is where are we going wrong? Why are we being plagued with these amount of murders and deaths of our children in our community? And I want to say this, whoever is upset with me, I don't know. I'll have to beg your forgiveness afterwards, but it's necessary for me to say this. We ought not to neglect our ancestors. We ought not to disrespect our ancestors. We ought to venerate our ancestors, and we ought to show our appreciation for the work that they has done before us in order for us to be where we are today. I believe the neglect of our ancestors is one of the things that we're being punished for very severely. Disease, we have. Sickness, we have. Deaths, we have. We have all of those problems in our community. Now, we could chalk it up to all the logical reasons and say, well, we poor, so we ain't eating right, and then boy children dropping out of school, so that they're going wrong, they're following bad company. We could chalk it up to all the logical explanations we want, but we cannot fail to recognize our ancestors in words and deeds, and then when things going wrong, try to point the finger in another direction. All right. Now, I want to talk plainly on a one or two topics. I do not think there is anything wrong with getting yourself educated and on par with the practice of the Orisa tradition that is practiced in the motherland, in the Americas, in Europe, anywhere it is being practiced. We need to sort of be informed and on par so that if we have to communicate with other practitioners from around the world, that we know the language to communicate with them in. However, I do not think it is wise for us to throw away what our ancestors has preserved for over 400 and something years. I think it is very disrespectful of us to turn our backs on them, to not recognize them, to not venerate them, and then to say the tradition that was practicing is nonsense. And to throw it out and say we don't want it is foolishness, is disorderly and all of that. I think that is disrespectful. And I think just the same way we turning our backs on them, guess what? They turning their backs on us too. So all the prayers we asking them, do this and help you with that and help you with this and help you with that, they're not interested in hearing it because they realize that we're not following in the way, we're not appreciative of what they have done, and we have turned our backs on them. I don't know if you might want to say anything to add to that particular discussion.
All right, and to what I said, well, first I'd like to say, my organization, the Orisa Community Congress, you know, as the chief, we like to say chief executive officer, but really chief. And then the politics, a lot, we look at society and what is happening, and just as you said, we have to look at ourselves and understand where we came from. And when you look at our society, our community, it's not that we in discipline, but we don't comprehend what we are doing, or we don't structure it in a way that it can be, they can see the discipline in it. We speak about, you go a feast and you see all kind of thing happening, but we also remember the cultural influence that also has embedded in our society. So as I was telling somebody earlier today, when I share my prayers or I give a booklet, is not I'm moving away from tradition, but in terms of enhancing our tradition. But when we use the Yoruba prayers or Yoruba context, we have to remember we're going back to where we was. Remember, we talk about 400 years. 400 years, we were speaking Yoruba, our people were speaking Yoruba, our ancestors were speaking Yoruba. That's why today we could still be singing these songs and we could hear some of our elders could still say certain sentences or some folktale that the elders would have used. Then the period of the influence of Christianity and the syncretism and all the things that followed basically move us away. When we identify Egun Festival as how we see it from Nigeria sense, but we look back at some elders who talk about carnival basically was our influence in terms of the mask and costume that they are making today. So the Egungun costume or the Egungun masquerade, basically, we may follow the fashion, but we are not using the principles. They come like we have Orisa Ilu. We're supposed to be the Orisha for our community, and the Egungun will represent that Orisha. Just as how in Nigeria they'll have their mask which will represent the village. So that 400 years history, I think it is preserved, but I think we have not done proper research or proper, let's say, collective understanding or collective agreement in how we could present it.
All right. Well, you know what? I personally have done a great amount of research on that same issue of Carnival and Calypso and the West African influence. I wrote 2 papers for the University of Trinidad and Tobago on that said topic, right? It is undoubtedly, the Carnival has been undoubtedly influenced greatly by West African tradition and culture. Mm-hmm. The steel pan movement, calypsos, and the masquerade to a great extent, right? Or what we just call mass for short. I don't want to have to dwell too much on that though, because I want us to kind of stay focused on several issues, right? The local isheshe, or the practice of the tradition in the way that we practice it in Trinidad, I'm saying we need to record that, we need to preserve that, and we need to acknowledge all the people who has contributed to the tradition in the past, right? And the person we focusing on today is Ebenezer Elliot, or who was referred to as Ebenezer, right? Ebenezer apparently was a very influential healer in his community. And I think nationally he was well known, right? I think he was also, beside him practicing the Orisa tradition, he was also involved in a church to one of these American Baptist type churches. Right? So I think he was into both worlds, as people let's say. Right? Or he was a man of all nations, some people let's say. All right. It is said that he was taught a lot of the Orisha part of the tradition from an individual by the name of Ma Diamond. I don't know if you've ever heard that story.
Yeah, I heard
Right, the name. Right. So he was to a great extent versed in the Yoruba tongue, because I understand he used to carry on many ceremonies in Yoruba, you know, with all the litanies and everything, and he actually spoke the language, right? Beside that, he was also involved with the fraternity, because I've seen pictures floating around with him in his fraternal outfit with his lambskin apron and everything. So it seemed that he was also heavily involved in that. Actually, there is a book called He Got the Power, right, that was written about Ebenezer Elliot. It is in the public library. If you go now, you could probably borrow it from almost any one of Nallis branches, right? And in that book, the book was written by a white female author who interviewed him on several different occasions. And she gave account to many of the statements that he made, etc., etc., etc. The book is an interesting read, but reading the book and being familiar with the practice of the tradition, there are some variants in terms of the explanation that local people may not necessarily agree with.
Now, well, one other thing you have to remember, I think the lady who wrote the book, she was like a researcher.
Yes, she was.
And then basically her experience, she got connected, or she got, you know, more deeper into it, and she did a good research. But you remember, they express it from their worldview.
That's right.
And
From a European,
from European
I don't want to say white person, so I will just use the term European, but I think the woman is American.
Yeah, but this is why we say, remember, okay, in terms of what we are looking to do, all right, February month is what we call, I think they call it African History Month.
Okay.
All right. Now we try to coin the term Heritage Month in our group. We're not changing whoever want to have their African history, but Heritage Month, so where we recognize our heritage. Because when we talk about African History Month, we start to look at Malcolm X, we start to look at Nkrumah, we start to look at Garvey, we start to look outward, but not inward.
Okay.
So we looking at inward and recognizing even Panisa. How do we make a presentation as to this ancestor? How do we present him in terms of our understanding, even in our evolution to the next level of connecting with Ifa? How do we present our recognition of Panisa?
Well, basically, he served the white community. It's not even just a matter of his Africanness and his willingness to identify openly with African tradition. Yeah. But in terms of if he's a national hero, we have to look at the fact that, yeah, he served the interests of everyone, not just members of the Orisha community.
So that's why, so when I say, so that's why I say in terms of our heritage, it don't necessarily have to be an African heritage, because half of my heritage is Indian. You understand? While the other half might be African. But in expressing our celebration of them, I think we always allow other people from outside to give presentation to our heroes and our historians, or our, let me say, our elders.
Well, I think that's something we need to take charge of. This is why I said earlier, we need to start documenting the history. Yeah. We need to start recording it and archiving it. Right. And we must give our worldview on how we interpret our tradition and
Our
our
tradition.
culture and how the stories are told of our heroes. We
Right.
must give other people the opportunity to do that.
And this is what I say. So this is what I say when you have, as I say, recording, collective recording. When I say collective, you doing the writing. We get somebody who can do an artistical presentation. In terms of if we have to present, let me say, even make a Egun to represent, a Egungun masquerade to represent Panisa in celebration of his presence. We could incorporate all our people, and because we allow so much of not only Western, but also we allow African influences that we bypass, that we don't even see ourselves in the art and the craft. And we had a great artist which was, well, Chief Leroy Clark. I remember his traditional chief name now, you know. And
Yeah.
when you look at what he drew as Sukunya, what he drew as Shango, what he drew, he drew as Orisha, it is totally opposite to what Nigeria would represent, what the African continent would present. And we
Well,
could all these
Baba,
things. Mm.
Baba, we could go on and argue about that, and let me tell you why.
Mm.
First and foremost, we must understand a couple of things. Our ancestors, some of our ancestors rather, let me don't paint everybody with that broad brush. The time that our ancestors came from West Africa, what they brought here because of the location we are on the islands of the Caribbean
Mm.
was well preserved.
Mm.
It didn't have too much tribal interference as they do in Nigeria.
Yeah, that's it. It's
Here,
collective.
here we had probably about 14 different groups, but mainly West African people on the island of Trinidad, joining and mixing blood with each other, joining the religious practices and the traditional practice, and creating one big mishmash, which we have still existing today in the form of what we might want to call Shango Baptist and all of that business there. But what I am saying in a nutshell is that what we have here might be closer to what was originally practiced back in West Africa during the time that the slave trade started.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people are discounting and saying, well, it's nonsense they're doing, and they're even pronouncing the Yoruba word properly. Well, you know what? We might actually be pronouncing it a lot more proper than the people in Ile-Ife today. And the reason I say this, I ain't crazy. I've studied some bit of linguistics, and I understand the nature of language. Yes, language is dynamic. Yes, language is living. But when you're living in a society that has over 100 tribes and has more than 140 something language and has had a history where you've had tribes coming from all over Africa, including the Wolofs, and invading, right? And superimposing the culture and the language on another group. Your language would have absorbed a lot of elements from different cultures and different tribes and different languages. Nigeria was ruled by the British. Nigeria was greatly ran over by Islamic influence. The same Wolofs and them, most of them were Muslims. You see? So, I mean, you have to have a clear historical understanding of Nigeria in order to understand the different cultures that has influenced Nigeria. And in understanding the different cultures, you would understand that there would have been different linguistic influences. So the language itself that we call Yoruba today that is spoken in Nigeria is not a pure language. It's a language that has been influenced by many other languages, including English and Arabic. So when you compare now what has occurred here in Trinidad and in other islands in the Caribbean, where we have still the form of Yoruba that was spoken back then, that when you compare it now to modern spoken Yoruba, you realize is very different.
Yeah.
It's very
No,
different,
no,
not because it's a dialect or we break it up or we destroy it or we do something to it. It's very different because what has happened in Nigeria is it has went through many, 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 many different changes.
Yeah.
Because
No,
of the
well,
things that I've just listed.
so remember we have to look back at when, remember you used them dialect, right? And some dialects are basically formed by the influence, as I say, by other things. So if you look at the premise, so as you're saying, in our recognizing our heritage, this is part of our heritage. Even if
Yes,
I may,
definitely.
yes, sir. So even if I would want to say, yes, I'm an initiator of IFA, I'm a practitioner of Isheshe, all I'm saying is just I'm practicing my tradition in Yoruba that we are influenced by the present day Yoruba people.
No, and again, Baba, I mean, I don't want nobody misunderstand me. I am not saying that we shouldn't learn from the modern people in Nigeria,
No,
the
I
Yoruba
understand that.
language. We just now, let
Yeah.
me make my point clear
Yeah.
because I don't want nobody
Yeah.
misunderstand my scope.
Well,
I am
you
not
can.
saying that we cannot learn what is
Mm,
currently going on. And the reason why we have to learn it is because if we practice an Orisha tradition and if our Orisha tradition, we have to be fluent in the language they speak in order to communicate and exchange information with them. We also have to be able to communicate with other people in different places in the world who practices the same tradition. So
yeah.
therefore, I am not discounting the importance of that. However, what I am saying is what we have, we must also recognize that it has value. The
Yeah.
fact that it has been here over 400 years and has survived up till today says that it must have retained some measure of originality in the form of which it was when it first came here.
Well,
And I am saying that the amount of influences we've had culturally and linguistically is a lot smaller than what has taken place in Nigeria. That is all I am stating.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying, but
All right.
what I'm saying, in terms of what you're saying, in terms of when we express it, that was saying in terms of preserving what we have. When we express it, we should also be able to express, like, all right, when we home in our space, we should express our thing in our space as we do. When we go international or collective with other groups, we express it in terms that to everybody basically be on one page.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
That's
So
exactly
now,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
But what we need to do though, let me try and bring it back to the Ebenezer Elliot
So
holiday thing,
right.
right?
So basically this is what, because we have to remember that our history cannot always be preserved in books, because we also need to be influence, I say, influence it in our festival. So in recognizing Paniza in a festival way and try to bring it national, we could also influence other groups and other nationals, heroes could be recognized in our
All right,
in our,
okay. Well, my in my mind, even though we might be asking for a Ebenezer Elliot holiday and recognizing him as a national hero, it does not mean as part of that celebration we cannot also recognize other outstanding members of
other
the Orisha
nationals.
community who has made contributions. I think that might be a fantastic day when we could probably elevate and venerate a lot of the other contributors to the Orisha tradition and not just Ebenezer Elliot. But one of the reasons why I keep bringing the name Ebenezer Elliot is because he was one of the most recognized contributors. That is one. And secondly, because of his character and his sense of being a balanced person, we might be likelier to succeed in having a holiday named after him and celebrated in his memory. Now, my suggestion was the 28th of February, and I'm going to explain why. The reason I'm suggesting the 28th of February is that Ebenezer Elliot used to have a Obaluaye celebration.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say festival or
Well,
I don't know which term you might want to use, right?
The local term now is festival, but it's the same thing. Or you used to say
back then it used to be
we used to
feast.
say we peace. We have it our
Right.
Obaluaye feast.
So normally what happens is this feast is held every leap year. All right. So that would mean on a year when you have a 29th of February.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is we have the Ebenezer Elliot holiday annually on the 28th, and on every leap year we have the Obaluaye festival. But my suggestion, or my request rather, is that for that festival, we do not even call it the Obaluaye festival, but we could actually have an ancestral festival. And I would explain further why I'm making that suggestion. The Obaluaye festival, or the Shakpana feast, is celebrated to venerate the energy of Shakpana. Shakpana brings sickness, disease, death. All right? And these identified negative experiences, for now we're going to refer to it as negative. Right? Because leaving here to go to Orun may not necessarily be a negative experience. Right? Because this is the way that the earth remains populated. You have new ones being born and you have the elders transitioning on.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't want to go into that. I just want to go into the fact that the festival itself is held as an atonement every leap year to appease the ancestors and to appease the energy to make sure we don't have no disease and no sickness. Now, let me go further into that and say this. When our ancestors are displeased with us because of our refusal to recognize them, our refusal to venerate them, and our turning our backs on them, they punish us with, guess what? Sickness, disease, and death. We have a problem in this country, and hear what? And when I say we, are talking about our communities. We have a problem with our young men killing one another. We have a problem with our young men committing crimes. Am I being negative? Some people might say,
these are social imbalance we have to deal with.
And check the crime statistics. Go to the police commissioner.
No, this is social imbalance we have to deal with.
I just want to be sure that people ain't saying I just negative talking my own people and putting them down. I just being real. And I'm saying, in my estimation, the ancestors are not pleased because we are not doing what we are supposed to be doing. So we are facing punishment. That is how I feel. And it's not until we correct ourselves, again, focus on the development of good and balanced character, noble character, some people let's say, and find out what our destinies is and commit to fulfilling it. It's not until we correct that way, we're going to see a different day. Not until we start venerating our ancestors. Not until we start having the ebo.
The necessary
every leap year, yes. For our people and for our communities and for our villages, that we're going to see these changes. So my suggestion is, on the 28th of every year, Ebenezer Elliot holiday, together with the veneration of all the other ancestors who have already transitioned, who have contributed to our tradition here in Trinidad. That's one on the 28th. On the 29th, which is going to be every leap year, we're going to have a huge ancestral celebration where we will honor that particular energy as a form of atonement for our villages and community. That, in essence, is my suggestion. All right? I don't know how you view it. You might have different opinions to me, so
well,
to speak on it.
Now, remember, for us to grow, we have to work as a collective. Now, you have the vision. I already could see the picture and I could always tell you, I could start to work on a presentation for that which you're presenting. Even we could do it at the end of this month as recognizing, preserving our heritage and our history and recognizing our ancestors. Because now most than ever, we need the help of our ancestors with all this
Definitely.
pandemic.
Listen, and I believe our ancestors want to work with us. The problem I believe is us.
Yeah.
Because many of us want to turn our backs on them and is actually actively advocating it too, which I find to be very, I don't even want to use the wrong word, but you actually have members of our community who will tell you that what the elders was doing here is wrong.
No.
And that we don't need to follow that disorganized and it's crazy.
Now, one of the things I just recognize, now I just tell people, as if I initiate, I think I maybe see IFA in a different light to some people. IFA says we should not fear death and sicknesses because IFA will take care of his children. And IFA will give a guidance. And, when we look at, in terms of what you are saying here, is that, yes, IFA say he'll take care of us, but IFA works through the Orishas, IFA works through our ancestors, IFA works through our Ori. So sometimes in taking care of us, it means we supposed to do what we supposed to do. They're just as saying, Iwa Pele, Iwa Rere, good and humble character, means that you're supposed to know how you're supposed to behave. You're supposed to know how to apply yourself to situations that are before you. So I think these are the things we have to start to recognize in terms of not moving away from what we have. Because I always say, if I was just fitting in the literature to work along our worship.
Yeah, but Baba, what is wrong? All right, first and foremost, could you start a journey from where you are not?
No,
now, I know that sounds like a stupid statement, but think about it.
Right,
for you to start a journey, you could only start a journey from where you are. That's the point. So if we have a local tradition here, that is where we have to start. And the only way we could start is by properly recording, archiving, and recognizing what the practice is. And then guess what, Baba? We could build on what we have by bringing in new information.
All right. So let me just add a new information to what we have. There, you speak about Pa Elliot, Paniza, doing the litany. Iwara, Iwara, o. Ode kiriwa shure di logun o. Adojo oje kiriawa. Ode kiriwa shure di logun o. Now, what are they singing about there? Not the 16-day worship that your children has come together on the 16th day?
Well, Baba, my thing is, listen. The elders and them, because I could remember my grandparents, they had a totally different way from us today. The time we live in now is the information age.
Yeah. No, I
where
understand.
Young people who come in through the tradition now, they asking you plainly, what that mean? What this mean? What that mean? Okay. Yeah. That is this time we in here fast forward to today. But in the past, when you were a youth and you were under the older people, you could not ask them anything.
No, well, now we're saying, I understand what you're saying, but this what I spoke earlier in terms of what we have to build on. We have to build on what we have first.
Yes.
Right. So I'm saying first we have to clearly define. Yes, recording is good, but clearly being able to define what it is we had. Because while we might think we're looking at something new, as you said, we might be even speaking the pure Yoruba to what we are learning now because of the years of influence that is happening. Because Alafia, people put that as a greeting, but Alafia really means, how are you feeling?
Or how is your peace?
You understand? How's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
peace?
Yeah, how is
Right?
your peace of mind?
So if I'm asking your well-being, I'm asking your thing, but we put it as a greeting. Fair, but in response, I can only tell you, well, should if I understand, I could tell you, but I'm feeling too well, you know. Can you help me? But in learning, in understanding where we work, because that's why I use the litany, because most people in our local tradition, that is one of the important thing to them, you know.
Yes, of course, the order of the
Right?
litany. Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
So the most important thing is the key. Others tell people, somebody, the first cause. If you really want to understand Christianity, understand the first chapter in the Bible. You understand the beginning of the surah. The first cause. And I think we have to always try to understand our first cause. We begin with the litany. Why? Because we recognize these Orisha. What we are saying when we speak of Orisha Oko Imole, what are we connecting? So in that research what you are doing, I think we have to also have a collective conversation as to what was our elders really saying, and how, as today now that we have the information age, let me bring some clarity. So we build on the information and take it to the level
Baba,
which we take
the
it.
problem is a lot of the individuals who are taking in Ifa Orisha education is not looking inside. They are looking outside.
So, well,
If
let me
they are
put it,
looking outside, then there would be no emphasis on firstly gathering the information and archiving the information that we have, even to reach the point where you just talk about where we
all right,
analyzing and sifting through the information
all right,
using the modern tools to be able to make a determination what exactly they were saying back then. So
all right.
I am
But,
saying before we could even reach there, Baba,
mm,
we have to gather the information,
no, well, you
code
got
the
it.
information
Mm,
properly, and archive the information. And then once we have the repository of the information,
mm.
then we could have scholars now sit down and look at the information
Well,
and make sense of it.
you are speaking about it then, right? I'll speak about it now. No, I understand what you're saying, because that will take time. Because now, remember, the academic format will be different to the cultural format. Now, it comes as what you said earlier there. Well, I will not repeat what I said in a different form, because right now I think somebody said they send my information to other lands for people to comment on it.
That
But
is all right. Listen,
yeah,
listen.
no, what you
Baba,
was saying,
you, as I tell you before, we can't study that. We have a job to do. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
real simple. You have a destiny.
yeah,
I have a destiny. You see what I do in here? This is part of my EPIN. This is what I have to do. So
yeah,
whoever want to send it wherever, they could
yeah.
send it. Because the
No,
first interview I do with Ifa Porere on his network, things that I disclosed in that interview, many local persons did not know it.
yeah.
But recently I saw somebody post a video of the president of the ICR, and he mentioned some of the things that I disclosed on the first
Yeah.
video.
No,
So
I understand.
to me, what I'm saying, Baba, is you have a destiny to fulfill. In a nutshell, I have a destiny to fulfill. And the important thing is for us to carry out our duties. We cannot be concerned with what everyone says. I mean, I could quote some Urus for you and show you
Yeah, yeah, no,
in
well,
the
we have to,
Ifa
we,
where
we,
there were
we yeah.
individuals with clear oris and they
Mm,
allow people to confuse them. They went
yeah,
for reading here and reading there, and they end up being misdirected, and all the array was taken away from them. So
yeah.
I am
No, I
saying,
understand that.
as long as you are clear on what it is you should be doing, you shouldn't be
What
so
I'm saying,
concerned with the other.
when you speak of that, because it's not to knock people who learn in IFA, because there's a lot to learn in IFA. But see, what people are selling, what sells. When I say they're selling what sell, they're selling the miracle of IFA in a sense. Now, I could wear a crown, because what they sell me will give me the crown. But the Kong is of no value because the Kong is not in tune with my existence. So I just have a Kong. But now when I just tell people I never left my tradition of Baptist, my experience of Orisa, my experience of Christianity, because that is my community and that is part of my lineage and also my Hindu family. But as a practitioner of Ifa, which is the word, not the priesthood of Ifa, remember that you use the cult and you bash me with the cult word.
No, I ain't bash. Yeah, I
Right?
just tell you, I just find it
Yeah,
as a negative connotation.
yeah,
That's all.
right? But the religious aspect, the church or the priesthood aspect of Ifa, a lot of people is basically trying to learn that before they even establish a priesthood. But the theoretical, the philosophy of Ifa, the essences of Ifa is basically everything in life. So when I sit down with my Hindu friend and I'm talking Ifa with them. When I sit down with Christian people, I'm talking Ifa with them. And still conversing in terms of their religious belief. And they think, wow, Baba, I say, no, it's just our understanding. The laws of God is the laws of God. Excuse. The wisdom of God is the wisdom of God. Nobody can even comprehend the wisdom of God. It's like trying to count the number of sands in the beach. But in terms of like, as you mentioned, Obaluaye and recognizing Obaluaye, we're supposed to have already had about 20 festivals of Obaluaye in a sense. Because we do it the first time. They say we do it second. Because the more we do it, the more we develop a clearer understanding. We might miss something, you know. What we miss? Maybe the hour, maybe the time, maybe the color we wearing. Because we might have learned a color, not recognizing that color came from Santira. By the influence. It wasn't our connection. So there's a lot in terms of we doing, but in terms of we always hold back in a sense. You know, like a good thing was happening within another circle group and you find the influence, but wait now, why we talking business? But we ain't showing the collective understand because we have a brother was telling us how we could do business and wealth in the tradition. And nobody's referring to the brother. But then we trying to find a solution to wealth and how we put our tradition in business. So this is what I was saying. We have a problem in terms of putting what we say into action. So when you speak about the Obaluaye festival and you recognizing Japanese, I don't put that festival together. I gotta say this year we have it the 28th of February 2021. The launch. Let me put it as the launch. The holiday will come after, you know, because I'm a politician and know how to bring it in. But we could it in terms of the ideas what we are bringing. I think we have to take it to a level of let it manifest.
No, well,
And come.
as with everything else, Baba, right? It's just an idea that I am bringing forward.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to have divination. We're gonna have to do airborne. It's a process. The
Yeah, yeah.
tradition, the tradition have guidelines for every situation,
Well,
right? And
well,
what we have to do is very clear. But on this program, we just introducing the idea to the community so that people could have a clear picture of what we need, why we need it, why it is important, why it should be the 28th, why what we should do on the 29th every leap year, and why. All I'm doing here is trying to provide the rationale behind what we need to do and
well,
why we need to do it. That's
well,
all.
the 28th will be an easier thing for us to put in place because we have what 3 years again for the next leap year, right? So basically, in starting, we have 3 sessions of having events and then enter into that level of the Obaluaye festival. And we have a period in terms of bringing up people in alignment. So basically, as Ifa Risha Community Congress, how we just operate, we don't let our idea go to waste. We just start the idea. Even if it's 2 people alone, do the idea. You understand? But
Well,
it's something
it
because
always start with small numbers. But
it's
anyway,
not about.
Baba, We are now going on to 45 minutes, so we have 15 more minutes on this recording. So it's up to you. Just monitor the time and we go in for the next 15 or what? What you want to do?
Yeah, we'll just go down to the next 50 and close off. Now what I want to see, when I stepped into Oluwegbo Iroko, the sacred grove of Iroko, is when I went to a prayers at the tree site, the Iroko tree, or the Selcotton tree site, and I saw people were just there. Clear a little space, they go and they do their thing, somebody got space, they knock a drum, and when they're done, they leave the candles, they leave whatever, our friends, they leave the plate, the thing. And I said, now we have to start to operate different. I call some elders, I say, let's go and try to create a sacred site. Well, you know, we always have who land did it. I said, no, every land is God owned. And once you use it for his hours. So I went and cleaned the site and began the work. That was saying, when somebody come outside, that'll be so easy because it'll be so simple to make it happen. And it just grew from that point. So just cleaning the site and encouraging people to come to see the site in its newness. It become now something where even international people want to come to visit, to spend the weekend. So that's why we're trying to now realize we could market our tradition. Not about making money alone, but it's about creating employment also for our devotees, but also be able to allow them to be able to express aspects of the tradition that we may think. So where are our dance groups in our shrines? Where are our choir groups in our shrines?
Well,
Other
Baba,
than the drummers to play for the...
Baba, I can tell you where the people who had the potential to be that a lot of them in jail and some of them dead. Right? Because guess what? We turn back on we ancestors, and I would, you see, we could give you all the logical reasons. We could talk about the government failure. We could talk about the rates at which the black males drop out of school. We could talk about the community leaders that influencing them in the negative way. We could make all the rational, logical explanations. But you know what we are talking about? The fact that we are not following, venerating, recognizing, and acknowledging our ancestors.
Now,
I believe that's the reason.
Let me put me in one of the factors that you call it. I want to know, I try to keep it nice as I sell over the bruises of the politics. I, as an elder, had to know how to influence the younger one who has not fallen through the crack to stay on the right path. And it's for them basically to be the ones to recognize the elders. Right now we are going to honor Ella for this weekend, you know, and he does just feel excited and feel like he can live a little longer because the love will bring in his space. Now he's
the encouragement.
Baptist. Yeah, now it's a Baptist church. Now it was Soka Baptist. The church was called Souls of Christ Alive. Because in the days of Orisa, when he started there, the TV jumped, so he said he didn't want nothing to do with Orisa again. You understand? But in bringing the understanding of where our flaws was, because this is a thing, Otito, Ododo, we must say the truth and we must deal with the facts. There are flaws within our communities. And once we recognize the flaws and we take time to try to mend it slowly. So we mend those that are hurt from the past, but we also create opportunities for the younger ones who come in. So in terms of what we are trying to do, we're going in his space. So now he's saying Souls of Shangwa Alive. Well, I want to disrupt his joy. He don't fit in the Orisha, so okay. And he basically said the space is mine. He said, Baba, this space is yours. Whatever.
Brother, I want to say this, Baba. all of the various groups that practice African tradition in Trinidad and Tobago, it doesn't matter really what they call themselves. They all come from one. We all came from one. And eventually, we will all become one if we exercise patience and humility in our dealing with each other. Because as I've maintained this position, historically, we are all one people.
We are one people.
And when I say one, I ain't just mean traditionally, I mean genetically too. Because we mixed up. We literally related to each other. So why are we fighting each other over some name and some title? Well, my group is Shango Baptist, my group is Spiritual Baptist, my group is Orisha, my group is this, my group is that. We ought to cut that out. The point is this. If our Orisha community believe they have the highest level of knowledge, right? Of scientific knowledge and a clear understanding of the tradition, how would they be able to get the members who are practicing the African tradition to come over to that understanding? Not by being patient with them, not by being humble, not by being acceptant, not by exercising a great level of tolerance and understanding. This is what we need to have. If we don't have that, I am afraid we are going to remain a divided group. But for us to experience some measure of unity, we have to actually practice the 16 principles of the tradition, of the Ifa Orisha, the so-called rules. But again, many of us who are in the tradition, and are being sincere here, many of us do not practice these 16 rules of Ifa. We do not.
Remember,
or 16 laws of Ifa, some people call it.
Yeah. There's a teacher in Ifa say the Odu will be correct. The Odu will be correct. Interpretation is where the problem might be, and I feel a lot of them have problem with the interpretation. So in terms of, do not teach what you do not know. That is one of the 16
laws. Yes.
Laws. But the 16 law, they say teach what you know. You understand?
No, well, it is implied though.
No,
if they tell you what not to do,
right?
Indirectly, they're telling you what you can't do.
No, this is what a lot of initiates don't understand. So they just always want to say, "I cannot teach," but I'm teaching what I know. I'm not teaching what I don't know.
Yeah, but Baba,
no,
kind of right now you're on some dangerous grounds, but we go talk about it still. All right, let me say this. And I had this conversation with a brother recently, as recent as 2 weeks ago. It's very nice to be able to quote a Udu and have really nice sounding words, right? But it is better to understand it and to apply it to your life.
And that is what it is.
So there are a lot of people who would say you are not qualified to interpret Udu Ifa. You're not qualified to interpret Essay Ifa. You're not qualified to do this. And you're not qualified to do that. And you shouldn't be doing that. And you shouldn't be doing this. It's okay for them to speak and say all what you shouldn't be doing. But are the same persons who saying that doing what they are supposed to be doing? The same persons who saying that the things that they are saying, does their lives demonstrate it? So at the end of the day, Baba, I don't have to answer to Oludumare for none of them. You know who I have to answer to Oludumare for? For me. So again, the development of a good and noble character, I just always add the word balance, because good and noble is two specific qualities. Balance incorporates a lot more. So I just add balanced character and fulfillment of your destiny. It is every person's responsibility to carry out those two things, regardless of who you are. If you don't know of it, make it your business to find out, and it is your duty to fulfill those two things. So again, this is like the third time I'm saying it tonight. I really ain't concerned too much with what many people have to say about me. They don't have to answer for me, and I have to answer for them. Okay?
This is
Check it out. The two most important things that I mentioned: building good character and fulfilling your destiny. Tell me what role other people have to do in them two things.
that is it. And
What role does someone else have to do with me developing good character and fulfilling my destiny?
Well, that is what I tell them. We like to sing nice songs, but anything I do, I like to make sure it is a reflection of who I am. So he say, "Awa o soro ile wao, awa o soro ile wao. Esinka ko pe, awa o soro ile wao. I shall fulfill my traditional rights. I shall fulfill my traditional rights. Nothing shall stop me from fulfilling my traditional rights." Now remember I said my traditional rights, and I was say our traditional rights. So as we close, it's just to always remind people, you cannot go and get a file of your destiny and you want to read the brother's file. Because what your brother file and what your file.
Yeah, the blueprint for each person is not the same.
You understand? So if as the words of Ifa says, I am created in the way Olodumare made me to be. Or I am, they may say different, but they said I am acting the way Olodumare created me to become. So I can only be who I am. If I had never met an Olowo, would I not be a devotee of Orisa, Ifa? Then if I had never read a Bible, would I not be a child of God still? So we have to remember, in this life, we all come to fulfill our destiny. We all choose things to do in life. When I saw Odu, I think I choose wealth. Wealth is not money. Wealth might be good, plenty, wisdom, a good heart, plenty love to share, plenty understanding to give people. So if that is my wealth, I have to share my wealth. Otherwise, I'll die a stingy man. So until we come again on Ifa Risha Conversations, I, Awu Iwalewa, Daniel John Babamelo, ask that as we move forward, may we recognize our ancestors, but also let me also recognize our elders, those that need the recognition. Because yes, our sister has passed, a great singer, a great mother, and she's one of many that are still out there that need the love that we are printing up, the love that we are sharing in a visual form. But let me go and sit down with them and show them the love. Keep events for, and this is why I want to do. They were looking for space that are outside of the city format, so we can bring our elders and let them spend a day under nature. Sit down and eat a baked roast on tree stone, while they tell the stories and we listen to the stories as young ones, and make sure they are well taken care of. Even if for a day, we do it for one day. So maybe you should create the event for Paniza Day, that we give it, recognize the ancestors that has gone, but they also say we call the older ones also ancestors, those that are here, present still. All right?
Future, the near future ancestors.
The near future of the ancestors.
Yeah, all right. Well, I guess with that, we want to say Odabo, and I want to remind viewers to subscribe, to like, and to share the video. All right, and with that, we would say Odabo.
Odabo.